here to Monticello. I have modified my presentation. I don't know if the slides are gonna be provided, but I think everybody's in agreement that we're all interested in the same thing, and that's why you're here. So I won't rehash that. What I've decided to talk about is the Cemetery Restoration and Preservation Society. I serve as the president. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. My first vice president is Mr. Sylvester Peck, and Dr. Willett Boyer is also in the back. So we met, I guess, in all disclosure, Sylvester is my first cousin. He's also the family historian. So he's been doing this for a really, really long time for our family. Dr. Boyer is an archaeologist. They're both educators. So we kind of met. We realized we were doing some of the same things from different angles. And somebody said, well, why don't we formalize what we're doing so that we can tackle some of the things that we were seeing, particularly in Jefferson County, related to cemetery, genealogy, families, that kind of thing. So we started doing the work before we actually formalized our organization. As a side note, I think currently there are 150 cemeteries that have been identified and documented in Jefferson County. We know some of those are abandoned cemeteries, some of those are abandoned African American cemeteries. We all know that cemeteries are a place of, in my mind, they're sacred. Some have been destroyed here in Jefferson County, but they have history, they have connections, there are memories there. And one thing in particular is that the family connections, the generational ties here in Jefferson County to some of those cemeteries. So we were committed, we are committed to saving as many of those as we can, or at least making sure that people know that they are there. One of the things that's really important here, Dr. Boyer teaches here locally, and I'll show you some pictures kind of at the end here. But some of these students that he works with, he literally takes them out into the field, into these cemeteries. And when they see their names, you know, they go home and they say, oh, I saw this grave. Do you know who this is? And I think that's important because that allows them to be connected to this community, kind of understand where they came from. Our organization a couple of years ago, we were asked to do a cemetery tour for a family reunion. Wasn't quite sure how we were going to manage that. But the person that was organizing the family reunion said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a conference call number. We're going to get in our cars, and you're going to lead us to these cemeteries, and you're going to talk about them, and you're going to tell us as much as you know. We're going to get out, and we're going to walk through. And they had teenagers in the family. They had some, what we call the old head there. But they had teenagers. We went to properties that their descendants had owned. And it was amazing to me to see these young people excited about being on property that their great-grandfathers may have owned, you know, out in the country. So I was born and raised in here. Let me back up. I was born and raised here in Jefferson County, so I've been around for a few years. Know some of the people that I was raised up with. So I was able to tell them some of the stories about their great-grandparents. And it was, I'm gonna tell you, I was shocked, I was amazed, because I didn't think they would be interested. I really didn't. It's like, oh, we're in the country, we gotta go to the family, where the mall? They were not like that. They got out of those vans, they started playing on that ground and just having a ball. We went to the next cemetery and they identified graves with their last name and they said, well, who is this? And of course, there was always an old head there saying, well, you know, that's my granddaddy's, you know how to go, my granddaddy's cousins, that kind of thing. But they were able to give them that education on the spot. So that's what we're working with here in Jefferson County. I think part of what I'm supposed to be talking about is community involvement, collaboration. What I have seen is that when people hear and see, because Sylvester is the master of social media, I am not. And every time we go visit a cemetery or we have a program somewhere, he's doing exactly what he's doing right now. He's recording it. He's documenting it. He's putting it on his YouTube. He's putting it on Facebook. And there are people that no longer live here, but have connections to this community that see that and say, well, you know, I think my great-grandfather was buried in this cemetery, and I would like to help you. I'm not in that community, but I want to make sure that that cemetery is preserved. I want to make sure that we can still get to that property if we ever decide to come back to Monticello and visit. So that's how we are gaining the buy-in. We're truly, I guess you would call us grassroots. You know, I have always been interested in cemeteries because I think they tell a story. So sometimes I would be just wandering off by myself to read the story of the people that have been laid to rest in some of these cemeteries. Now, I have a weird hobby. There are usually 3 reactions I get when I say this. They either go, or what? Or somebody nods. I collect obituaries. And if you read an obituary, you read that person's life. And also on that obituary, usually is a spot that says where they were buried. So you have their story, you know where they lay, and to me that's just amazing. So I'm not necessarily an educator, historian, archaeologist, but I am interested in this work. And I know, I've talked to a few people, I know you all are in your various areas of expertise. So that's how we've gained some traction. That's how we put the word out. And that's how we've gotten people that may not necessarily be in this community now, but they feel a part of the community, and they want to make sure that what we're doing, that our work can move forward. You know, we'll have people that call and say, we need to talk. Can we talk with you guys? And can we, do you know where this person may be buried? And back to Dr. Boyer, who also works for the Monticello Research Institute, part of the surveys that they have done with those 150 surveys is to actually go down and when they're going through that cemetery, they're writing what's inscribed on those headstones. So sometimes it's a lot, excuse me, sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's not. But from their records, we know the cemeteries, and we know the people that are in that cemetery, or we can go to their files and look up a name and then cross-reference it to the cemeteries. I'm sorry. So that's good work for us to have. I mentioned earlier that I do work for the property appraiser's office. That's a unique place to be because as a curious person, when certain questions come up, You know, I go to the property appraiser's site, and I know how to navigate it now since I've been working there a little bit. And so that's also very interesting to me. And like I also said, we found some deeds. In my area, I grew up in the northeast part of this county, probably about a mile from the Georgia line. There's a 20-acre cemetery that's sitting out there. We found a deed where the original landowner deeded that off to a church. We don't know how many graves are out there. The owners are actually buried there from the early 1800s, but they've had burials there as recently as the last 5 years. So that's what you see in this area a lot. And that's where the family linkages, I think, continue to be. A lot of the sites here are on large land plantations. There may not be a deed specifically for that cemetery, but as much as possible, we have tried to make sure that those are identified. So we did apply for the Abandoned African American Cemetery Grant. The first time we tried, we missed it by 2 points. Mm-hmm. 2 points. We went back and we worked to do better. So I got 2 minutes. So I'm not sure if I know how to work this, but I want to show you some pictures. Which, this cemetery, you couldn't see anything. I know it's not a good picture, but you couldn't see anything. Dr. Boria took his students out there, and you saw what it looks like. You couldn't even see the ground when he took those students out there. These are high school students. They put in that sweat equity to clean that cemetery up. And let me tell you, I'm going to just tell you how important some of this work is. So this is a headstone of a master mason. He was probably from the African American community versus the owner of the property, who was also a mason. They're also buried in the corner, fenced off from the rest of the cemetery. But that, and I get emotional, I have to tell you, because that headstone, I didn't even know that person was buried there. I had heard his name basically all my life. And while I was walking, looking at the cemetery and the work that the students did, that's my great-grandfather. He was born in 1850, so he was born into slavery. He may have worked on that plantation, and he died in 1934. So that makes this even more personal to me. Thank you.